HOA built their entrance road on my 2,300 acres, so I sold it and cut off their only access. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, we would like to ask you for one small favor. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss any of our latest videos. It only takes a moment, costs nothing, and is one of the best ways to help us continue creating powerful, emotional, and dramatic stories like this one. Your support means more to us than you can imagine. Also, let us know where you are watching from today. Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character. You can't unbuild progress, Mr. Barrett. Marjorie Whitlock said it with one heel planted on my land and the other resting on fresh asphalt that had not existed 12 hours earlier. The smell reached my bedroom before sunrise, hot tar, diesel exhaust, and wet gravel drifting through the screen like a warning. At 5:18 that morning, the hiss of air brakes pulled me out of bed. By the time I drove my pickup across the east pasture, 3 dump trucks were backing through the gap where my father's iron gate used to stand. Yellow paint gleamed down the center of a brand new 2-lane road. Black street lamps rose from the shoulders. At the entrance, 2 stone pillars framed a polished sign that read "Welcome to Cedar Vale Estates." My gate lay in the drainage ditch, one hinge twisted, the old chain still looped around the crossbar. My father had welded his initials into that steel in 1989. BB. The letters were half buried in red dirt and crushed weeds. I shut off the engine and listened. Rollers thumped over the pavement. Backup alarms chirped. Somewhere beyond the ridge, cattle were bawling at the noise. I walked to the nearest foreman and asked who authorized the work. He handed me a clipboard without meeting my eyes. Cedar Vale Community Access Improvement, it said. Approved by the HOA president. That was when the white Cadillac Escalade appeared, moving toward me like it owned the road. Marjorie stepped out in a cream jacket and dark sunglasses, carrying a leather folder under one arm. She was 54, a luxury real estate broker and president of an HOA that had spent years trying to turn the western edge of Wyoming into a brochure. She looked at my boots, then at the dust on my truck, and gave me the kind of smile people use when they have already decided you do not matter. This is private property, I told her. She opened the folder and showed me a colored site plan. My pasture had been renamed Cedar Vale Parkway. This corridor was approved for community use, she said. The neighborhood needs reliable access. I pointed toward the ditch. You cut down my gate. It was obstructing permitted construction. Her voice stayed soft, almost friendly. That made it worse. I asked for the recorded easement. She did not show me one. I asked for the deed transfer. She flipped the folder closed. The road is already here, Mr. Barrett. You can't unbuild progress. Behind her, a contractor bolted a brass plaque onto one of the stone pillars. Established 2026. I could smell her perfume beneath the tar, sharp and expensive. She thought the pavement settled the argument. She thought enough concrete, enough paperwork, and enough confidence could turn theft into ownership. I bent down, picked up the old iron bell that had hung beside my father's gate, and brushed the dirt from its rim. 3 weeks earlier, a conservation group had offered to buy the 64-acre strip beneath that road. I had ignored the call. Standing there with the bell in my hand, I decided to return it. The bell felt heavier than it looked. I carried it back to the house and set it on the scarred oak desk in my father's office, where the morning light cut through the blinds in thin gold lines. Every few seconds, another vehicle rolled across the new pavement, and the vibration traveled through the floorboards. The bell answered with a faint metallic tick. It sounded like a clock counting down. Barrett Ridge had been in my family since 1948, when my grandfather bought the first 600 acres with money saved from hauling freight and repairing tractors. My father expanded it piece by piece until the ranch covered 2,300 acres of sagebrush, grazing land, creek bottom, and low, timbered ridges. It was not decorative land. It worked for a living. Cattle moved through the eastern pasture in spring. Hay came off the flats in late summer. Snowmelt fed the narrow creek that crossed beneath the cottonwoods. Every fence line had a reason. Every gate had a history. I had spent 20 years managing highway construction projects across 3 states, which meant I knew exactly what I had seen that morning. A road like that did not happen because somebody misunderstood a boundary. It required survey crews, drainage plans, grading permits, utility coordination, asphalt contracts, and weeks of preparation. Marjorie had not made a mistake. She had made a schedule. After my father died, I came home to take over the ranch and found his office almost exactly as he had left it. His coffee mug still sat beside the adding machine. A cracked leather tape measure hung from a nail. In the bottom drawer, beneath old cattle receipts and weathered tax records, was a rolled canvas map tied with faded twine. I opened it across the desk. A red line ran along the eastern edge of the property, following the old livestock road from the county highway to the North Ridge. My father had marked distances in pencil beside it. 64 acres, long and narrow, with its own parcel number written near the bottom. At the time, I assumed it was just another survey note. Now the line sat directly beneath Cedar Vale's new entrance road. I called my younger sister, Lydia, and told her what had happened. She went silent for 3 full seconds. Lydia was an accountant in Cheyenne and the only person alive who could make silence sound like a threat. "Did they record anything?" she asked. "Not that I have seen." "Did you give permission?" "Neither did Dad." I looked at the old map. Years earlier, during a wildfire, my father had allowed emergency crews to cross the ranch because the northern route was blocked by smoke. He had called it neighborly cooperation. He had also warned me never to confuse permission with ownership. "He let fire trucks through once," I said. "That is not an easement." Another sport utility vehicle passed outside. The bell clicked against the desktop. I picked up the conservation group's unopened letter from 3 weeks earlier and found the phone number beneath their letterhead. Before I called, I walked out to the cottonwood near the eastern fence. My father had once shown me a brass survey marker buried beside its roots. The grass was flattened now, and fresh tire tracks crossed the dirt. I knelt, brushed away the loose soil, and felt something solid beneath my fingertips. Cold metal. Still there. I left the brass marker buried where it was and drove straight to the Cedar Vale office before Marjorie had time to turn another lie into a permanent record. The building sat beside the model homes, all white stone, dark glass, and carefully trimmed shrubs that smelled faintly of fertilizer in the warming sun. Inside, the air carried roasted coffee, lemon cleaner, and Marjorie's sharp floral perfume. She was waiting behind a polished desk with a colored site plan spread in front of her. Dale Mercer stood beside the window, wearing a gray suit and the relaxed expression of a man who thought contracts were more powerful than property lines. Marjorie folded her hands. "I am glad you came to discuss this reasonably." I stayed standing. "Show me the recorded easement." Dale slid a document across the desk. It was labeled Community Access Cooperation Agreement. The first page offered me $12,000 and a waiver of future road maintenance fees. The second page recognized Cedar Vale's historic and continuous use of the Eastern Corridor. I read that sentence twice. They were not paying me for permission. They were paying me to say permission had already existed. "You want me to confirm something that never happened," I said. Marjorie's smile tightened. "Your father allowed community traffic for years. My father allowed emergency vehicles through during one wildfire. That established use. It established kindness." Dale tapped the map with one finger. The county approved this alignment. The map showed the creek, fence, and cottonwood shifted west by nearly 70 feet. I had managed enough road projects to recognize a boundary adjustment when I saw one, and this one had been drawn with confidence instead of accuracy. "Who prepared this survey?" I asked. Dale named a company from Casper. I wrote it down. Marjorie leaned back. "More than 200 families depend on this entrance. Children ride school buses through there. Ambulances use it. You should think carefully before creating a safety problem. That was her method. She took something that belonged to someone else, wrapped it in the word community, then accused the owner of selfishness. I looked past her toward a large sales display mounted on the wall. Cedar Vale Phase 3. 86 new homes arranged across the North Ridge. A bright green line ran from those lots to the road on my ranch. Beneath it, in bold lettering, were the words "Only primary access." The existing neighborhood was not the reason they had paved my land. The new development was. Without that road, Dale would need to build across the northern ravine, and I knew enough about terrain to understand what that meant. A bridge. Drainage work. Several $1 million. Marjorie followed my eyes and stepped between me and the display. Too late. How many of those homes have been sold? I asked. Dale's easy expression disappeared. That is not relevant. It is if buyers were promised permanent access across land you do not own. Marjorie closed the folder. Mr. Barrett, progress does not stop because one rancher dislikes change. I picked up the unsigned agreement and slid it back across the desk. No. But fraud usually stops when somebody checks the survey. On my way out, I heard Dale whisper her name. Not Marge. Marjorie. Quiet and urgent. The automatic doors opened, and dry Wyoming air hit my face. Across the parking lot, a billboard advertised the final phase of Cedar Vale with a photograph of the new entrance glowing at sunset. At the bottom, small white letters promised guaranteed access forever. I took out my phone, photographed the sign, and called Lydia. They are not protecting a neighborhood, I told her. They are protecting 86 closing dates. By noon, the first certified letter was waiting in my mailbox. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and stamped with the Cedar Vale seal like Marjorie was serving a court order. Instead of a threat. Inside, the association demanded $3,800 for what it called my share of the community access improvement. It also warned that any obstruction, signage, livestock gate, or private property notice placed along the road would result in daily fines and legal action. I read it twice at the kitchen counter while the smell of burnt coffee filled the room. Then I carried it into my father's office and set it beside the old bell. The paper looked expensive. The logic did not. I spent the afternoon photographing everything. Tire tracks across the pasture. The cut hinges from the gate. The drainage pipe they had buried through a shallow creek bed. The streetlights planted inside my fence line. At 4:30, I installed 2 temporary signs along the shoulder. Private property. No public right-of-way. By 5:15, both signs were gone. At 5:40, Deputy Warren Hale pulled into the yard. His cruiser raised a thin cloud of dust behind it. Marjorie arrived less than a minute later in her white Escalade, with Dale Mercer riding beside her. She had called the sheriff's office and reported that I was interfering with an emergency access route. Warren listened while she spoke in that smooth public voice of hers, the one designed for microphones and board meetings. She said children, school buses, and first responders were at risk. She said I had become hostile to the community. Then she handed him the altered map. I gave him my deed, the tax parcel record, and photographs of the brass marker near the cartonwood. He studied both sets of documents with his jaw tight. This is a civil boundary dispute, he finally said. I cannot shut the road without a court order or a confirmed survey. Marjorie smiled before he finished the sentence. Then tell him to stop interfering. Warren looked at her. I did not say the road belongs to you. The smile faded, but only for a second. She turned toward me and lowered her voice. You are making yourself look unreasonable, Cole. It was the first time she used my first name. I could hear the warning beneath it. You paved through my gate before sunrise, I said. Reasonable left with the construction crew. The next morning, Marjorie posted a photograph of me online standing beside the damaged fence. The caption called me a wealthy landowner threatening to isolate families over an outdated property claim. By breakfast, strangers were leaving comments under my ranch business page. By lunch, a local reporter had called asking why I wanted to block ambulance access. Lydia read the post over the phone and exhaled slowly. She is building a jury before there is a courtroom. I know. Do not give her the picture she wants. That afternoon, 3 concrete trucks rolled over the new road toward the Phase 3 lots. The low rumble crossed the pasture and startled the cattle away from the water trough. One young calf slipped against the fence while turning with the herd. It was not badly hurt, but the sight of it standing confused in the dust made my hands tighten around the top rail. Lydia wanted me to park the tractor across the pavement. I wanted to do it too. Instead, I moved the cattle to the western field and installed cameras on the barn, the gatepost, and the cartonwood. Every truck, every license plate, every minute of traffic went into a digital folder. That evening, I sat at my father's desk while vehicle after vehicle crossed the ranch. Each vibration traveled through the floor. Each time, the bell gave the same quiet metallic tick. Marjorie thought silence meant surrender. She did not understand that I was counting. Naomi Caldwell filed for an emergency order 3 days later. Her office smelled like printer toner, old leather, and the peppermint tea she forgot to drink. She spread my deed, the county parcel map, and the photographs across a conference table, then warned me not to expect a clean victory. They have prepared for this, she said. They are claiming 3 different rights to the same road. The first was a boundary adjustment. The second was historic use based on my father allowing emergency vehicles through during the wildfire. The third was the one Marjorie had been saving for court. Easement by necessity. Cedar Vale's attorneys argued that hundreds of residents depended on the eastern route and that closing it would isolate the neighborhood from the county highway. They have another way out, I said. Naomi nodded. Then we need proof. The hearing took place the following Monday in a courtroom that smelled faintly of dust and floor wax. Marjorie sat behind her attorneys in a navy suit, her hands folded neatly on the table. Dale Mercer sat beside her, staring straight ahead. Their lawyer displayed photographs of school buses, delivery trucks, and an ambulance using the road. He spoke about public safety, families, and continuity. He never once mentioned the 86 homes Dale planned to sell. Naomi showed the judge my deed and the missing easement. She explained that the road had been built without my permission. The judge listened carefully, then asked one question. What happens to the residents if I close it today? That was the moment I knew where the hearing was going. The judge refused to issue an immediate closure. He ordered a full certified survey and preserved current access until the ownership dispute could be resolved. The gavel made a small wooden knock, but it landed in my chest like something heavier. Outside, cameras were waiting. Marjorie stepped toward them before Naomi had closed her briefcase. Today, common sense defeated one man's greed, she said. Her smile was calm. Practiced. Almost grateful. I walked past without speaking. The dry wind carried the smell of exhaust from the courthouse parking lot. By the time I reached my truck, my phone was already vibrating with news alerts. The photograph showed Marjorie at the courthouse steps and me behind her, blurred and unsmiling. Back at the ranch, the traffic felt louder. Trucks crossed every few minutes. The old bell clicked on my father's desk until I finally wrapped a shop rag around it. Silence should have helped. It did not. That evening, Lydia arrived from Cheyenne with 2 banker boxes and a bag of takeout that went cold while we reviewed records. She wants you angry, Lydia said. She needs you to block the road before the survey is finished. I stared at the red line on my father's canvas map. Then I will not. Near midnight, a delivery driver left a rigid envelope at the front door. The return address belonged to Wyoming Prairie Conservancy. Inside was the purchase proposal I had ignored 3 weeks earlier, along with a new letter asking whether I would reconsider selling the Eastern Wildlife Corridor. I read the parcel description slowly. 64 acres. Separate legal number. The same narrow strip marked in red. Lydia leaned over my shoulder. That is the road. I looked at the old map again. The line was not a note. It was a division. My father had separated that corridor from the rest of the ranch years ago. Outside, headlights moved across the pasture in a steady stream. For the first time since the hearing, I did not hear traffic. I heard an opportunity. Graham Pike arrived before sunrise with a dented survey case, a thermos of black coffee, and the same canvas field jacket he had worn when my father was alive. He was 67 now, retired for nearly a decade, but the moment he stepped into the eastern pasture, his eyes started measuring distance. The grass was silver with frost. Tire noise moved along the road behind us in a steady hum. I led him to the cottonwood and pointed to the shallow depression beside the roots. Graham knelt, cleared the soil with a hand trowel, and exposed the brass marker inch by inch. When the edge of his tool touched metal, the sound was small and clean. A single clang in the cold morning air. He brushed away the dirt and read the stamped number. Then he looked toward the pavement. "They missed your line by more than 60 feet, he said. We spent the next 6 hours following the original boundary. His equipment confirmed what the old canvas map had suggested. The entire entrance road sat inside the 64-acre parcel, sometimes by 62 feet, sometimes by more than 90. The drainage ditches, street lights, stone pillars, and yellow centerline were all on Barrett land. Graham checked the county map Marjorie had given Deputy Hale and frowned. This coordinate system was adopted years after the date printed on this survey. The wind moved dry grass against my boots with a whisper. So it was recreated. Or altered. Naomi took over from there. She traced the filing history through the county clerk, the planning office, and the notary records. By the end of the week, her conference table had disappeared beneath copies. The supposed boundary adjustment existed only as a scanned duplicate. No original had been recorded. My father's signature matched one from an old agricultural loan document, right down to a faded ink break in the final letter. The notary listed on the form had retired 14 months before the stated signing date. The paper looked official because someone had assembled it from pieces that once were. Then Naomi found the construction emails. One message from Dale instructed the paving crew to begin at 2 in the morning to avoid unnecessary interference from the adjacent ranch owner. Another warned that the eastern route had to be completed before the next round of home closings. They knew exactly whose land they were using. The last piece came from an archived planning packet for Cedar Vale Phase 3. I opened the file and saw a second access route drawn across the northern ravine. It connected directly to the county highway. Beside it was a cost estimate for a bridge, drainage work, and reinforced approaches. For $1,800,000. The route had been approved. It had simply been removed from the final construction schedule because Dale called it financially impractical. Naomi leaned back in her chair. There goes necessity. Cedar Vale was not trapped. Marjorie had chosen my pasture because stealing access was cheaper than building it. Naomi wanted to file immediately, expose the altered records, and ask the judge to close the road. I looked at the red parcel line on my father's map and thought about the proposal from Wyoming Prairie Conservancy. Winning an order would start an appeal. Selling the parcel would create a new owner with a protected purpose and no reason to negotiate with an HOA. How quickly can a sale be recorded? I asked. Naomi studied me for a moment. Quickly, if the title is clean. It is. Outside her window, traffic moved along the courthouse square. I could almost hear the old bell ticking from my father's desk. Then do not close the road yet, I said. Let Marjorie keep believing she 1. For the next 10 days, I let Cedar Vale celebrate. Marjorie sent glossy emails announcing the successful completion of the community entrance. Dale scheduled a ribbon-cutting ceremony for Saturday morning and invited county officials, real estate agents, local reporters, and every buyer under contract for Phase 3. A temporary stage appeared beside the stone pillars. Workers planted flags along the shoulder and washed the pavement until the black surface shone under the Wyoming sun. From my porch, I could hear drills, delivery trucks, and the low murmur of people preparing to celebrate something they had never owned. Meanwhile, Naomi handled the sale. Wyoming Prairie Conservancy sent 2 representatives to inspect the 64-acre corridor. One was a wildlife biologist named Hannah Reed. She walked the creek bed, studied tracks near the Cottonwoods, and explained how the parcel connected 2 migration routes used by elk and mule deer. The pavement cut directly through the center. "We can restore this," she said, looking toward the streetlights. "But public traffic cannot remain." That was exactly what the purchase agreement required. No residential access. No commercial traffic. Emergency use only until Cedar Vale completed its approved northern route. Every unpermitted structure would have to be removed or abandoned. Lydia reviewed the financial terms. Graham attached the certified survey. Naomi verified the title twice. I signed nothing until every page reflected the same parcel number stamped into the brass marker beneath the cottonwood. Marjorie called me the evening before the ceremony. Her voice came through the phone warm and polished. "I hope you will attend tomorrow. It would be good for everyone to see that we have moved past this misunderstanding." "I will be there," I said. She paused, probably surprised by how easily I agreed. Dale prepared a revised cooperation agreement. "We can sign it publicly and put this behind us." "Bring it." After the call, I went into my father's office. The old bell sat beside the rolled canvas map. I removed the shop rag and lifted it by the iron loop. Its surface was scratched from years of Wyoming wind. But the tone was still clear when I tapped it with my thumb. Saturday arrived bright and cold. More than 100 people gathered at the entrance. Folding chairs faced the stage. A brass band from the local high school played near the model homes. Coffee steamed from paper cups, mixing with the smell of fresh mulch and new asphalt. Marjorie wore a pale blue suit and stood beneath a banner that read "Building the Future Together." Dale moved through the crowd shaking hands with buyers. Behind the stage, a rendering showed 86 homes connected to the highway by the road beneath our feet. I parked my truck at the edge of the pasture and carried 3 things with me. My father's canvas map. The old iron bell. A blue envelope containing the recorded sale documents. Marjorie spotted me and smiled as if I had arrived to surrender. She called my name from the stage and thanked me for finally supporting progress. Then she made the mistake Naomi had been waiting for. With cameras recording and buyers listening, Marjorie declared that Cedar Vale owned the entrance corridor, had always possessed the right to use it, and had never required permission from the Barrett family. I stood behind the last row of chairs and let every word settle into the microphones. Dale looked toward me. His face had lost its color. He understood before she did. Marjorie raised a pair of ceremonial scissors beside the ribbon. I checked the time on my watch. 10:14. At 10 that morning, the county clerk had recorded the transfer. The road beneath her shoes already belonged to someone else. Marjorie raised the scissors, but before the blades touched the ribbon, I walked toward the stage and set the iron bell on the podium. The metal rang once against the wood, sharp enough to cut through the brass band, the camera shutters, and the polite applause. Every face turned toward me. Marjorie lowered the scissors. Her smile remained in place, but her fingers tightened around the handles. I unrolled my father's canvas map across the podium and placed Graham's certified survey beside it. "Before you open this road," I said, "you should probably know where it is." Graham stepped forward from the crowd and pointed to the marked boundary. Naomi handed copies to the county officials. The red line, the brass marker, the parcel number, and the road all matched. The stone pillars, the lights, the drainage ditches, and every inch of asphalt sat inside the 64-acre corridor. Dale moved toward Marjorie and whispered something I could not hear. She ignored him. "This has already been settled," she said into the microphone. "The association has lawful access." Naomi opened a folder. There is no recorded easement. The boundary adjustment is unsupported by an original filing. The listed notary had already retired when the document was supposedly signed. The crowd went quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause against the flags. Marjorie looked toward the cameras, then back at me. You cannot block hundreds of families. I am not blocking anyone, I said. I do not own this parcel anymore. I opened the blue envelope and removed the recorded transfer. Hannah Reed from Wyoming Prairie Conservancy joined us on stage. She held a formal notice bearing the Conservancy seal and the county recording stamp. At 10 that morning, ownership of the corridor had transferred. The land beneath the entrance was now protected property. Residential and commercial traffic were prohibited. Emergency access would remain temporarily available, but Cedar Vale had 72 hours to remove its signs, disconnect the unapproved lighting, and stop using the road as its primary entrance. Marjorie stared at the document as though the words might rearrange themselves. You sold our road, she asked. Her voice had lost its smooth edge. I sold my land, I said. You built your road on top of it. A murmur rolled through the chairs. Buyers turned toward Dale. Residents began asking questions all at once. Deputy Warren Hale stepped beside the stage with a county transportation officer and a temporary closure order. Orange barriers were already waiting on a flatbed near the highway. Marjorie pointed toward the neighborhood. People have to get home. Hannah answered calmly. They may exit today. After that, civilian traffic will use the approved northern route. Dale finally spoke. That route is not built. Naomi looked at him. Then you should have built it before selling houses. The first barriers went down before noon. Vehicles formed a slow line leaving Cedar Vale beneath the stone sign. Marjorie's white Escalade was the last one through. She stopped beside me, lowered her window, and said nothing. The perfume reached me before the vehicle rolled away. 2 workers from the Conservancy lifted my father's old gate from the trailer and mounted it on the original hinges. I fastened the iron bell beside the post. When the gate swung closed, the bell rang once across the pasture. This time, it did not sound like a clock. It sounded like a line being restored. The first lawsuit arrived 4 days after the gate closed. Then came 12 more. Homeowners claimed they had been promised permanent access in their purchase agreements. Buyers from Phase 3 demanded their deposits back. Contractors stopped work, title companies froze closings, and the silence over the North Ridge grew deeper each morning. Marjorie had spent years teaching Cedar Vale residents to fear the person outside the gates. Now they were reading their own documents and discovering the problem had been sitting inside the clubhouse all along. Naomi traced the sales disclosures back through 3 years of board meetings. Marjorie and Dale had discussed the missing easement repeatedly. One set of minutes included a warning from the association's former attorney stating that construction could not begin without my written consent. That page had been removed from the packet given to homeowners, but the original remained in the attorney's archived files. Another email showed Dale promising Marjorie a commission on every Phase 3 home sold after the entrance opened. The road had never been about safety. It had been about closing dates, sales bonuses, and avoiding a $4,800,000 bridge. The association's insurance company refused to cover deliberate misrepresentation. Dale's development license was suspended while county investigators reviewed the altered survey and notary records. Marjorie faced a recall vote in the same clubhouse where she had once lectured. Residents about community standards. She lost by 173 votes. Only 6 supported her. Ruth Ellison came to the ranch 2 days later. She was 71, silver-haired, and carried a folder against her chest with both hands. They told us your father donated the corridor, she said. They said you were trying to take it back after the homes were built. Her voice shook with embarrassment. I poured coffee and let her sit at my kitchen table. Through the window, the old gate stood quiet beneath a pale Wyoming sky. Most of the residents did not know, I said. That matters. I agreed to keep the emergency gate available for ambulances, fire engines, and school transportation until Cedar Vale completed a temporary northern connection. I would not punish families for documents they had never seen. But I would not restore public access. Permission was kindness. It was still not ownership. To pay for the permanent bridge, Cedar Vale sold its unused recreation parcel and the oversized clubhouse Marjorie had renovated with association money. Construction began before winter. 1 year later, I stood beside Hannah Reed as crews removed the last strip of asphalt from the conservation corridor. The air smelled of damp soil and crushed sage instead of tar. Streetlights were gone. The stone pillars had been dismantled. Native grass covered the shoulders, and fresh elk tracks crossed the soft ground near the Cartonwoods. My father's brass marker remained exactly where Graham had found it. Lydia joined me at the gate carrying the old canvas map, now sealed behind protective glass. In the distance, traffic moved across Cedar Vale's new bridge, faint enough to sound like wind. A breeze caught the iron bell and sent one clear note over the pasture. Marjorie had believed asphalt could turn confidence into law and theft into ownership. She was wrong. A road belongs to the name written beneath it, not the person who paints the center line. Justice did not arrive with shouting. It came through a survey marker, a recorded signature, and a gate closing exactly where it had always belonged.